Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, the 2nd of October. Welcome back to the D3D4 football podcast dedicated to all things Leagues 1 and 2. October's just began and it has, well, it's fair to say, it's delivered already. We've seen the only unbeaten record in League 1 come to an end. We've seen the only unbeaten record in League 2 come to an end. I was at Chesterfield yesterday to watch them lose to Maidenhead, so the only National League unbeaten record is now at an end as well. October's got off to a pretty good start in what is well, technically it's the fourth month of the season now because we started in July, but I'm kind of calling it the third full month because you can't really count the last day of July as being the opening day of the season. But we're going into the fourth month of the season. I'm very low on numbers today. We normally have a big crew of us who can get together, but they're not all available. Thankfully, I've been able to make great use of the emergency loan system to draft in everybody's favourite, Gab Sutton, to join me today. Gab, thank you so much for this. You really have got the light ring out.
I'm slightly worried about the use of the word emergency there, Ed. It's like,
well, I'm just saying, when look,
if the worst comes to worst.
That's not what I mean. I just mean, you know what happens. You're low on numbers and you need to get a guy in very briefly. We had you in. The way it's going, Gab, I might make you a loan with an option to buy.
Or maybe on the free agent
quite low on
market.
Numbers. No, it could be. It's a very short-term contract.
Yeah,
You've got a rolling deal at the moment.
Yeah.
It does seem to be, but you're right yourself.
Yeah, very well, thanks, Ed. It's looking forward to this, actually, yeah. Should be good to chat all things League 1 and 2 with you.
Yeah, there's tons to go through, as there always is in these
divisions.
Indeed. And I know when I try and put the lineup together, the running order, I always try and put 2 or 3 at the back that I kind of think we gloss over to save time, and I'm really struggling with League 1 because there's always so many significant results as well. But I think we managed it on this occasion, and we'll run through that order. So a reminder before we get going, this podcast is in partnership with The Big Step, which tackles football's relationship with gambling. There is an excessive presence in gambling adverts within football, and The Big Step continue to do great work to raise awareness about the dangers of gambling and the impact it can have on so many people's lives. A big thank you as well to all our Patron members whose contributions allow us to keep this podcast going and the website going as well. D3D4 Football quite simply does not exist without you, and we really are grateful for that. But without further ado, we'll get going, and we'll begin with the world's best third tier. League 1. Right, League 1, Gab, there's only one place to start really. What looked the game of the day on paper at Portman Road? Ipswich Town against Portsmouth. Ipswich Town 3, Portsmouth 2. Pompey's unbeaten start of the season is up, and Ipswich, after a third consecutive difficult game, have pulled off a magnificent result. We didn't talk about Ipswich last week because they played on the Sunday after we finished recording, a game against Plymouth Argyle. What a brilliant game, by the way. I absolutely loved that.
Fantastic advert for League 1, wasn't it?
And it's a terrible shame that we have to rely on international breaks almost to get League 1 coverage more.
And you look at it as well, how good a job BT do with the National League, and you sort of think Absolutely. It's a shame that, I don't, that with the fan bases of some of the clubs in League 1, even in League 2, I don't believe for a moment that, there wouldn't be interest in some companies to take on those things. So, yeah, it'd be nice to have a bit more coverage of League 1 and 2 for sure.
It would. There's so much quality down these lower leagues. You and I both know that, and I want people to be able to come and see it more. Because I really think that's a perfect example of what you can have. And there's plenty of quality in this game as well. The opener for Ipswich Town from Marcus Harness, led through by Connor Chaplin. I mean, those two attacking tens that Ipswich Town have, got to be a fun gig for them, being those two at the minute. Chaplin and Harness have been sensational for them, playing just behind Tarish John Jules, who started today, and it was Ray Ladapo who came on later. Portsmouth got an equaliser. Dane Scarlett, Thalbert, Christian Walton, Colby Bishop stepped up to convert the penalty. But Ipswich returned around to make it 2-1. Freddie Ladapo scoring the second for Ipswich Town to Malik Davis cross. Believe it was his first touch actually after coming on. It had not been too long after being substituted that he got the goal. But Portsmouth get back level again. Ronan Curtis fouled by Sam Morsey in the box. The second penalty, Colby Bishop stepping up again to score that. But within a minute, Ipswich were back in front. Carl Edwards cross. This is quite a funny goal to me. It kind of loops up with a massive deflection perfectly onto the head of Wes Burns, who's probably about, centimetres out from the goal. It almost kind of takes you by surprise at how he's able to just drop onto his head. But it gives Ipswich Town the win, and Portsmouth's unbeaten run, Gab, is over. Wes Burns back into the Ipswich Town team yesterday. Wasn't able to play last week because he's away with Wales. Ipswich have had their last 3 league games: Sheffield Wednesday away, Plymouth Argyle away, and Portsmouth at home, taking 4 points from that time against the teams that are right there around them. I think it's a respectable return, to be truthful.
Yeah, I think the thing I wanted to add to what you said there, Ed, is the wingbacks, and I as I tweet on my account after the game for any EFL fans who want to kind of give us their take on how things unfolded, and a couple of Ipswich fans mentioned how good Wes Burns and Leif Davis were, and with Burns it's not really a surprise, although he was coming back into the team after Caden Jackson started at right wing back at Plymouth Argyle the week before because he was absent. But yeah, Burns right back with a bang, really. He was excellent.
Oh dear. Stars you in to go on, Ed.
Okay. Well, let's keep it going, Ed. And then Leif Davis, of course, is making a real impression. And I think the idea was for Leif Davis to compete with Greg Lee for that left wing-back position. Yeah. But Davis seems to be making it his own at the moment for Town.
Well, Greg Lee's got a bit of injury problem, I think, as well, which is part of the reason why Leif Davis is getting ahead. There's the depth on that left-hand side. I'm not quite sure it's at the same level maybe on the right. I think it was Caden Jackson who played at Plymouth Argyle last week in the absence of Wes Burns. So seems a bit of a stronger depth on the left at the moment than the right, perhaps.
Possibly.
Although you have got Kane Vincent-Young who can operate on both sides.
Yeah, I like Kane Vincent-Young, actually. I think, with Jackson, I don't know. He's a striker, but then he's not a lone striker, is he? And with the way Ipswich play, they play 2 number 10s, as you mentioned, and then 1 out-and-out striker. Is Caden Jackson going to be the out-and-out striker? Probably not. Is he a number 10? Probably not. So then the only real role for him would be a wing-back option. So probably a difficult one system-wise for Caden Jackson.
Yeah, but there's plenty of depth to get excited about in his side. They obviously started Tyrus John Jules. They can bring through Ladapo on. Gaston Ahmed's got a bit of an injury, sadly, at the moment, so he's going to be absent for a little while. But I think it's that central Thor for Ipswich that's so special to me. Sam Mawson and Lee Evans in deeper midfield.
It's meaningful to you, is it?
It's meaningful to me. I think it's a really important part of the team, certainly. Sam Morsey and Lee Evans in deeper midfield, Connor Chaplin and Marcus Harness taking up those 2 more advanced roles as well. That's a great quartet to have, and it's been so consistently part of their team so far this season. Yeah,
absolutely. Totally agree. And just the consistency as well that Morsey and Evans have produced in midfield. Wouldn't surprise me if both of them started 40-plus games this year. And then Connor Chaplin. Do you know, Connor Chaplin has added a real creative element to his game under Kieran McKenna as well, Ed, because if you'd asked me about Connor Chaplin before he worked with Kieran McKenna, I would have said he's a sort of really athletic forward, bit of a pressing merchant. Yeah, he likes to get about the pitch and this, that and the other. And now it feels like there's more of a nuance to his game. He can thread a ball through the eye of the needle. He's added different layers to his game. And again, I think that speaks to McKenna's coaching ability.
I love the setup under McKenna. It's very good. I think there's a lot of experiments. I think some teams are trying this sort of 3-4-2-1, I'd call it, with very narrow attacking midfielders playing.
Can I ask you a question then, Ed?
Yes, of course.
To the automatic promotion in League One, because some of this might become relevant to the other teams that we'll come on to discuss. But do you see it being Ipswich having the potential to break away, and then your Plymouth Argyles, your Sheffield Wednesdays, and your Portsmouths in the battle to get second? Or do you think Ipswich are one of the 4 teams that are going for autos?
I don't know if I really fancy a breakaway at the minute. I mean, Ipswich start was very, very strong, and these have been 3 tough games recently. They've been making good use of the games against the lower ranked sides, certainly the ones that you would expect them to get the results against. That I think maybe in past League One seasons they didn't, and that was part of the reason why they found themselves away from the promotion mix the last 3 seasons in League One before this one. I don't know, to be truthful with you. It's a bit like what we'll get onto later with a League Two as well. I mean, I talked with James about Leyton Orient last week, talking about how long we think their unbeaten run could go on for, and we saw what happened with that, and we'll get onto that later in League Two. But for now, that is a fantastic response from Ipswich Town. Puts them up into second place, just a point behind the league leader, so we'll get onto a bit later. To the Pirelli Stadium for another 3-2. Burton Albion 3, Forest Green Rovers 2. Actually, I'm going to change that. I'm going to say Victor Adeboyejo 3, Forest Green Rovers 2 is probably the better way to sum it, because it was the Adeboye-Show.
Oh, I like that one, Ed. That's very good.
And that is the title of this episode. I'm going with that. Adeboyejo had the first goal for Burton Albion inside 10 minutes, getting on the end of a Tom Emma cross, a great downward header from him. And at first half, the Burton really dominated, quite frankly. I think Dino was quite critical of the lack of a ruthless nature from Burton in that first half, where they really should have capitalised on the lead they had and built it even more. And because it was only one, Forest Green managed to get back into it in the second half. They got an equaliser through Reece Brown from a low cross. Hamer brought down Josh March in the box after a great through ball from Carl McAllister off the right-hand side. Penalty and a red card for Tom Hamer. That's a shame to see him absent the next two games, because he's been a model of consistency really ever since he signed under Jimmy Thorpe-Hasselbank in the first place. Connor Wickham stepping up and converting, and Forest Green Rovers, in desperate need of 3 points, found themselves in a position where they were 2-1 up against 10 men. But they didn't keep the lead. Mustafa Carriol cross from the right hand side, a deep cross that found Victor Adeboyejo for 2-2, and then to top it all off, 92nd minute, Victor Adeboyejo with a cracker from just outside the box to seal his hat-trick, to seal the Burton win, and grab Burton not only the first home points of the season, but the first home goals of the season as well. It's been a long wait for that at the Pirelli Stadium. To do so after being 2-1 down and down to 10 men is doubly impressive, really. I give huge credit to Dino Mamria for going 3-4-2 late on to try and win this, when he could very easily go and just shut up shop after grabbing that equaliser like you can do when you're down to 10 men, but he didn't do that. There's been a number of players who have really changed, I think, in the brief time Dino Mamria's had as manager, and today it's all about Victor Adeboyejo, really. Gab, Adeboyejo is one of those who I think has kind of got to his mid-20s without ever really being established anywhere. He had so many years at Barnsley, for instance, which include loan spells away, but he never really became the starting striker over a long period, and now he's at Burton, and especially with Sam Winnell still getting up to speed, he's the main man up top, starting consistent minutes, and he's showing how good his all-round game is. To be honest with you, Gab, it's like watching Stuart Bevan, who we talked about before as the kind of figure that Burton be leading up top, really. He's a guy relatively small in stature. He's not exactly a big target man like other strikers can be who lead the line, but he's such a relentless workhorse both in and out possession, and there's goals into his game now as well. He's got 5 across his last 5 league games. He got that same tally across his last 2 seasons at Barnsley. He's really benefiting from being my man at the moment.
Yeah. I think with Victor Adeboyejo, you go back to his time at Barnsley, and he played a bit of a part in their promotion, but that was mainly scoring, a few tap-ins in that 18-19 season in the sort of 6-yard box. It feels like he kind of had quite a few years, and then all of a sudden he's really come to the fore for Burton Albion, and done a lot in terms of his all-round game. And I think that speaks to Dino Mamria, the man management qualities that Dino has shown to bring that out of him. And for me, Burton Albion, they're always at their best when they've got a strong centre forward that runs the channels really well and just doesn't stop. So you mentioned Stuart Bevan there. I'd also go to Liam Boyce as well, a few years after that. Could they have another one in Victor Adeboyejo? And I just like the idea of, and forgive me, I'm not actually had the chance to see the highlights, so I'm kind of feeding off you a little bit, but I love the idea of Adeboyejo running the channels, holding the ball up, and then you've got Keeler Dunn, who in those pockets of space, he can really create something. He's got those sort of veins of ice, if you like, to produce those final moments of quality. We know what Joe Powell can do, and Johnny Smith. So there's all of a sudden, under Dino Mamria, he's not had long in charge, but all of a sudden we're starting to see signs of a team that could have a resurgence. And I think there's a bit of excitement back at the Pirelli.
There is. It's really basic things what Dino has done, really. He's just got the players believing in their own ability again. There's a unity back within the squad that truthfully just wasn't there under Jimmy Thorpe-Hasselbank, whether it was a lack of real care from Hasselbank at the end of that spell particularly, or a general lack of understanding as a manager. But they're a galvanised team under Dino Mamria at the minute, and it's 2 wins in the last 3 league games for them that's got them back into the pack at the bottom. By no means job done yet, certainly, but they're back in there. Forest Green, Gab, and particularly in Birchnell, losing from that position is quite frankly terrible. Being 2-1 up against 10 men who are bottom of the league, haven't won a home game yet all season. The pressure on him from fans is growing ever more. And I sympathise a bit with him because he's had that Forest Green Rovers team ripped apart during the summer. It's lost its 2 key fullbacks. It lost Ebu Adams as well to midfield. He hasn't got his 2 main strikers available fit at the moment, Matty Stevens and Jamil Matt. He's had to make use of new recruits into there as well. I mean, even during the week, we saw Richard Hughes, their excellent director of football, go to Portsmouth. Pompey had gone for him during the summer, hadn't been able to successfully get him, but they have now got their man. Dale Vince certainly has his opinions about how that deal went through, certainly. But Birchnell, how much longer do you think he realistically could have if this Ronald Thorne continues the Forest Green Rovers?
Well, I think the Richard Hughes news is interesting because there's one school of thought that says the new director of football, I think Ian Wood, the lad at Barrow, they're supposedly quite interested in. The lad at Barrow, he's probably an older man than a lad. But yeah, so the one school of thought would be that if it is Ian Wood that comes in as director of football and he wants his own man, then that puts Birchnell's position under pressure. The other school of thought would be that a director of football just coming in cold would be more reluctant to make a big decision over a manager than somebody that's been there a little bit longer. I can kind of see it both ways, but maybe the fact that there isn't that director of football now, in place now means that Birchnell has a little bit of breathing space. But certainly not from the fans, I suppose, as well, because there is that mounting pressure after the Exeter shambolic performance there, and then losing in the manner they did at Burton Albion.
And they lost to Morecambe as well.
Yeah, lost to Morecambe.
There's been crucial games recently, and they've lost all of them.
Yeah, and I think that's. I think it's quite damning as well that what you mentioned about the fact that even though Burton Albion had 10 men, they still smelt blood against Forest Green, and I think that suggests that they've not necessarily got the fight required for a dogfight. You've got Ben Stevenson and Reece Brown in central midfield, two lovely technical footballers. Are they up for a League One dogfight? Now, I have some sympathy for it. First of all, I know Ian Birchnell, he replaced Graham Potter at Ostersund. You don't do that if you're not a really good coach. He's very highly rated in coaching circles. I think he's a very process-driven coach, but I think in terms of you've kind of got to trade that off against the pragmatism required to get results in these divisions. And I think there's question marks over Birchnell, whether he's shown enough of that. From the game I saw against Morecambe, there's not really a clear pressing strategy in place or a strategy against the ball, which worries me a little bit, because that means you're putting more pressure on yourself to try and create over long periods of passing from deep and things like that. So for me, I think Ian Birchnell's still got a lot to prove. I know he's a good coach, but can he adapt to the requirements of a dogfight? I think we're about to find out.
I think we are. There's still, I've noticed the reactions of some Notts County fans and some general National League observers seeing the results of Forest Green Rovers recently and going, yep, it's not really a surprise. I think it's called the National League Obsession, a podcast who just keep quoting tweets of Forest Green Athletes saying Ian. I think they quite know maybe the reputation that was there from his time at Notts County, where I still think he was maybe a bit of a Marmite character during his time at County, where some people saw him as an innovative coach and other people thought he wasn't living up to expectations. And right now he's finding it difficult at Forest Green. I mean, our classic at D3D4 is that we finish recording and the manager gets dismissed, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was Ian Birchnell. But
he's had injury. The other thing I'd add to that, though, Ed, is that he's had a lot of injuries to contend with.
He has, but how long can you keep using that as an excuse?
Yes, I know, and it's fair. I think it's a factor, but I don't think it's enough of a factor to explain the last three results. And I think certainly he should be under scrutiny. But I think it's worth putting that in there as a factor as well.
Yeah, Bolton Wanderers at home for them next on the 8th. Tricky test because Bolton are looking good, and we'll get onto them a bit later on. To Stadium MK, Milton Keynes Dons 2, Peterborough United 3. This was almost a perfect away day for Peterborough United, but it got quite scary quite at the end, to be honest. Their opener from Johnson Clark-Harris, another goal for him, found space in their box to receive a low cross and score. Ricky J. Jones put a cross in down the left that was scored by Kwame Poku, playing on the right. He scored at the back post. Ricky J. Jones will get their third after half-time as well. And heading into added time, Peterborough 3-0 up and cruising. Daniel Harvey made it 3-1 in the 90th minute, and it became 3-2 just a minute later through Matt Smith. But Posh held on. Gab, I want to say Posh are back to their best and looking class with this exciting front line, but that was a pretty unnecessarily nervy finish at Stadium MK for them.
Yeah, I think Peterborough back-to-back league wins, I believe, for them. I think that's really significant after the losing run that they had been on. I think seeing as MK Dons got those 2 goals, from the 90th minute onwards, I do think that you've got to give some leeway and say for 89 minutes that was a very convincing performance from Peterborough. They didn't have much of the ball, but they were very incisive with Kwame Poku, Johnson Clark-Harris, and Ricky J. Jones as well. I think that front three can cause a lot of problems. And then you look at the depth that Peterborough have got on the bench. I mean, Ronnie Edwards is one of the most talented young centre-backs in England. He didn't get on the pitch. Nathan Thompson, experienced. He's won promotions in these divisions. Jack Marriott, really quick striker at his best. Joel Randall, I still think could come good. Harrison Burrows, really exciting talent for the Posh, who Dara thinks is going to be worth a fair few million. So that's a strong bench for Peterborough as well. And I think that, yes, I think they probably didn't end the game as professionally as they would have liked. And I'm sure Grant McCann will be talking to his players after the game. But I think the real crucial thing here is that they got the win that they needed with Bolton and Barnsley winning to stay in touch, stay within 2 points of the top six. Because if Bolton win at Cheltenham in midweek, then all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more. I suppose there's Barnsley still to catch, isn't there? But yeah, it was a crucial victory for Peterborough, and I think Grant McCann will be happy with that.
It was, and it's 6 goals scored in the last 2 games against Port Vale and MK Dons. It's what you expect from Posh really at League One, to just find a lot of firepower in them and get the goals. And I think the start of the season we were seeing a 3-5-2 out of them with Jack Marriott and Johnson Clark-Harris at the front line. It's a new look shape now, a 4-3-3 with that front line. Ricky J. Jones off the left, Clark-Harris still leading the line as the main man up top, and then Kwame Poku down the right as well. Really consistent midfield trio as well with Giando Thukes, Jack Taylor and Ben Thompson. There's 2 Thompsons.
I know, yeah.
It gets me confused a bit at the time. Nathan's the defender, isn't he? But that's sort of a consistent midfield trio. Quite attack-heavy fullbacks, particularly down the right with Joe Ward, obviously playing open play everywhere up the right-hand side, but it went with Dan Butler at left
He's
back.
back from injury, isn't he, as well, Butler?
Yeah, he is back from injury, and he's played a part in the last 3 games. I think he was a sub during the Port Vale game, but started this one at left back instead of Burrows. And Posh look a bit better. Definitely look a bit better. A bit of a necessary nervy grand finale, a bit of a finale set up there, so at the Stadium MK, but back-to-back wins.
I think just if I can just make a slightly more general point as well, Ed, about the playoff scramble in League One. If you're a team that's below Peterborough at the moment, you're basically hoping that 2 of Barnsley, Bolton, and Peterborough don't finish in the top 6, which is quite an awkward situation to be in, unless one of the top 4, who I think could break away potentially, drops off. So it's going to be awkward for teams sort of outside.
I am going to ask you about this game, actually.
Well, I mean,
a little bit later down the line with some of the teams just below. We'll get onto that, certainly. But let's talk about the league leaders, who got top of the table after their win on Sunday and have kept their space. Plymouth Argyle went away to Wycombe Wanderers, won by a 1-0. Sam Cosgrove with the goal. His 3rd since joining on loan from Birmingham City. He was brought down for a penalty, converted it in the first half. It's his 3rd whilst on loan from Birmingham City as well. Chris Thorino came close to an equaliser for Wycombe. Vokesman and Metti also came close, but were denied by Michael Cooper, who really is just one of the standout goalkeepers at lower league level, really. There's so much potential in this guy still. Morgan Whittaker came close to a 2nd for Plymouth Argyle from a free kick, and Danny Mayer also came close, coming in off the left-hand side. Argyle's setup from yesterday, by all accounts, was designed to counter Wycombe's play, to be honest. They went with a back 4, all made up of competent defenders, certainly. Brendan Galloway, Dan Scarr, James Wilson, and Nigel Londvik as well. You still had that little bit of attacking midfield quality that was in them as well, with Morgan Whittaker and Thinner Zaz in advanced areas, and then Sam Cosgrove leading the line as well. Very smart setup from Stephen Schumacher, I think, Gab, and he absolutely nailed it against a team that they've traditionally found it quite difficult against in Wycombe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I imagine that they wanted Wilson and James Wilson, of course, as sort of slightly more central as opposed to playing on the right of a back 3, and Dan Scarr as well. Have them in those central positions because you want to really cut out the threat posed by Sam Vokes, because if you can do that, you probably go quite a long way to limiting Wycombe Wanderers. You probably go a long way to limiting their opportunities to get Gareth McCleary and especially Anis Mametti on the ball. And I think that looked like a big part of what Stephen Schumacher has tried to do. I think what's interesting for me is that there was times when Ryan Lowe was in charge of Plymouth Argyle, and he was maybe criticised at times in the 2021 season for being a bit too plan A orientated. And that meant they were quite a streaky side. So when things were going well, they were great. And when things weren't going so well, they maybe dropped off a lot. Now, obviously, Ryan Lowe oversaw some brilliant form in the 21-22 season before moving on to Preston North End. But I do think that what you're getting with Stephen Schumacher is maybe slightly more of a pragmatic edge as well, which is allowing them to take points against Ipswich, against Wycombe Wanderers as well, and be able to adapt to the needs of individual games. And it looked like, I think one of the replies I got on Saturday was Stephen Schumacher's a tactical genius. So who am I to argue the Green Army?
I think he is. I think this is a genius idea, really, to counter Wycombe's play. Go and play them at their own game. Brilliant. Really clever. 4 defeats in a row for Wycombe, without a win since August. To be honest, it makes me wonder where they could be without the individual quality of Anis Mehmeti. They're a long way off the team that made the playoff final last year.
Yeah, I think a big thing that Wycombe Wanderers have done in recent years has been to invest in their B team. So the idea is that they take the pressure off their recruitment because they've got some players coming in, bubbling under the surface, ready to come in and fill a gap, so that they don't sign players to fill gaps. They sign players because they're the players that they want, because that's the quality that they can bring. The B team has borne fruit in recent years, I'd have to say, with Anis Mehmeti and with Christopherino Joseph and a few decent players coming through. But at the same time, I think I worry a little bit about Wycombe because they had more players, started the season with more players over 30 than they had between the 23 to 27 age bracket. So not many peak age performers. So they're kind of relying on making sure that the veterans don't sort of drop off, which is a bit of a worry for me, because you're looking at players like Joe Jacobson, I think, has gone off quite a bit this season. Jordan Obita's now starting ahead of him. You look at possibly Gareth McCleary. Is Gareth McCleary as good as he was at times last season? I'm not quite sure. So they've got one or two question marks over the veterans. Is Sam Vokes even has had his injury issues? And then you've also got this question of whether some of the younger players are going to develop at the rates that Wycombe need them to. So that feels to me like the issues that Wycombe Wanderers are facing. All the while, there's possibly a portion of Wycombe supporters who are incredibly grateful for what Gareth Ainsworth has done, and I'm sure the majority continue to support him as Wycombe Wanderers manager. There may be a minority that are looking at it and thinking, would we like a fresh voice? Has the man that's got us on this incredible journey, is he the man that's going to continue it? I think for a lot of Wycombe fans that's not a question, but maybe for some of them it is. So I think they're probably going to need one or two in January certainly to try and lift things.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it largely is the same core of last season. And last season I loved that 11 and I loved it. But now I look at that 11 and I think it seems quite average, truthfully. Another away win by 2-0. Cambridge United 0, Derby County 2. A brace to James Collins, latching onto the end of a really poor attempted back pass by Zeno Ibsen-Rossi to score the first goal. Fed by Max Bird in the second half to Thar in a low second and secured the win for Derby County in Paul Warren's opening game. That is their first away goals of the season. It's the first away win for Derby County this season. And coming at the Cambridge United side, who's part of their strongest part of their season, has been their home form at the Abbey Stadium. So a very, very good result to them. They went 3-5-1-1 to Derby yesterday. James Collins leading the line. Lewis Dobbin playing just behind. Front-footed wing-backs in Tom Barkhazen and Nathaniel Mendes-Lang as well, without David McGoldrick due to injury yesterday. Paul Warren, Gab, I don't think we've had your thoughts on the appointment yet. I personally think it's a sensational one, really. I think the work with Rotherham really justifies his reason to come to Derby County.
I think the first thing that Paul Warren did at Rotherham United was he transformed the culture of the club. He made made the recruitment process far more rigorous in terms of sorting out the kind of characters that he was bringing into Rotherham United, and that made a huge difference. I've still at times had some reservations of him about him as a tactician at championship level, but what I think Rotherham's form this season proves is that maybe when you've got slightly better ball players at the back, maybe it wasn't necessarily as much to do with Paul Warren as a manager stylistically to always want his teams going direct, but maybe that was just a reflection of the personnel he had. And obviously when you've got Michael Smith up there, whereas Rotherham they've actually played out at times and they've played a bit more on the deck and they've got the results from that, 1 defeat in 9. So this is certainly the highest Paul Warren stock has ever been. I suppose I'm curious a little bit as well, Ed, because Paul Warne is a very emotionally open character, and I think that's a huge strength. We've talked about the why wall that he puts in the dressing room in terms of getting everyone's motives together and building that collective spirit, which I think is a huge thing. I also feel like he's going to have to manage expectation a little bit more at Derby County because they're a big club, and that seems like a cliche, but it's true. They're former champions of England. They've got I don't even know what the attendance they tend to get is, but it's sort of 25,000, is it? So there's a lot of expectation at Derby, which Paul Warne's going to have to manage. But I think he's certainly got his strengths, which are changing the culture, changing the recruitment process, and I think building teams that fight for each other.
Certainly. Liam Rosenior left Derby County. I thought he was going to stay around. I said last week I'd sympathise a bit with him, really, because he inherited a newly built squad, a lot of individual, maybe quality players, a very good first 11, I felt, maybe not quite with the depth long term. But how would you assess the time Rosenior had with Derby County? And do you sympathise maybe a little bit with the decision to move him on?
Well, I think the first thing about the challenge that he's faced at Derby is that it's basically completely rebuilding the club in a very short space of time. So Close came in, completed the deal after one of the other interested parties things fell through with. All of a sudden it was signing 15 players very, very quickly. And obviously that's going to have an impact on pre-seasons and preparations. Now, of course, the individual quality of some of these players like Conor Hourihane is on the high side for the level, and he had that advantage. But I think it was also very difficult as well, just to create you look at Cambridge United, for example, and they kept 19 players from last season still in situ, whereas Derby basically building from scratch. So, I found it a slightly odd one as well, Ed, that Derby gave him the tag of interim head coach, because it felt like a little bit a case of, kind of having it both ways. It's like, we want to have you as manager, but we don't want to fully commit to you. And I wasn't sure about that arrangement from the beginning. I feel like if I was in Liam Rosenior or Rosenier's position, I wouldn't want to be the one that was sort of the interim. I'd rather either be the head coach, because starting a season as interim it doesn't feel
well. When I saw he was announced as interim at the start of the season, I was expecting it to not last as long as it did. I think you naturally do with that. You kind of expect things to be done maybe within the first month, and it hasn't happened until the end of September. So, was a bit surprised to see him go as long as he did, and it got to the stage really where I thought Derby were doing fine under him, and the only real blemish on them was the away record, the fact they hadn't got any goals, any away points, but they still found themselves just outside the playoffs, and think that if they can pick up that away form, they're going to get into the pack up at the top. So I sympathise a bit with him, really, because I don't really think he did anything that badly, truthfully, but they moved on to Paul Warne, and I do think that's an exciting appointment, and I think he will have a good impact, and that's a great opening day for him away at the Cambridge side, who have been very good at home. Very good result at Derby County, certainly. Another 2-0, this one at the U-Bowl. Bolton Wanderers 2, Lincoln City 0. Elias Kachunga brought down after having his shirt pulled. Initially a goal kick was given, but a reversal of a decision led to a penalty being given to Bolton instead. Dion Charles converted that, and they got a second in the second half, intercepting a Lincoln City throw-in, and Jon Daddy Budvarson would ultimately capitalise to give Bolton another win. They're looking very good right now, Gab. I've got to say, I'm really liking this Bolton 3-5-2 they've got. I love the plethora of striker options that they've got available there. It feels a little bit like I saw with Plymouth Argyle, particularly under Ryan Lowe, where there's so many different starting combinations they can have up top in that front line, and all of them fill you with confidence, whether it's Jon Daddy Vadvarson, Dion Charles, Amadou Bakayoko, Dapo Lion, Elias Kachunga as well. I envy the striking options Bolton Wanderers have got and Ian Everett's got at the moment.
Well, let me take that theme on, Ed, because I'd like to talk about the midfield as well, because before the season, if you'd asked me who Bolton Wanderers' best central midfield pairing would have been, I would have said Carl Dempsey and Aaron Morley, because you've got Morley as the playmaker, and then you've got Carl Dempsey who's going to drive on, a bit of a box-to-box type, and then you'd maybe have Oladapo Afolayan as a number 10, the creative type. And what they've actually had is Thomason has been absolutely outstanding for the last few games.
And that's brilliant as well, because Thomason, he had a big influence in the League Two promotion as well. I kind of wondered if he stepped up the level and you saw the midfielders come in, is he going to drop down the pecking order? But no, Ian Evatt is keeping his faith with him, and he's really rewarding it with him. He's still such a young player as well.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, MJ Williams as well. I wouldn't have had him down as starting midfielder for Bolton Wanderers, because I would have kind of, my logic would have been, if you're playing with a back three, do you need MJ Williams with that solidity? Does he offer enough? But actually, he's proved me wrong a little bit, really. And I think it's such a lovely dilemma for Ian Evatt to have, to be able to go into a midweek game and bring in an Aaron Morley. They might sign Alan Morley.
Alan Morley's a good one. Where's he play for?
And Carl Dempsey. So yeah, incredible depth, and it feels like that's the way across the park for Bolton Wanderers. They look very strong in terms of depth, but again, we'll come back to it, I'm sure. It's so competitive, and one of Barnsley, Bolton and Peterborough is going to not finish in the playoffs this season, at least one of them, if the top four stays as it is, and that's before you get to Derby or any of the teams that are going to try and make a late run for it. So it does feel like anyone below 8th is going to struggle to make the playoffs this season, and it's an early call to say that, but I feel like it's looking that way.
Well, it's interesting to talk about anyone below 8th, because we're going to get onto the team who currently sit 9th now, and that is Accrington Stanley. Your secret favourite team, I think, Accrington Stanley. I think you'd openly admit you are an Accrington Stanley fan. I've seen you in the shirt plenty of times.
Yeah, I do. I do sometimes go to the gym in my Aki shirt, so I do. It's Andy Holt, mate.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
No, why not?
Yeah, I do love that guy.
Yeah.
And also John Coleman, he's like such a perfectionist as well. Like he's like, you can talk to him after a win, and he's still a bit grumpy, and I kind of like that. So Aki, big win for them against Morecambe.
Yeah, a Lancashire derby with Morecambe, a really big one. Morecambe had the 10 men in the first half. Arthur Nahua sent off the violent conduct, basically leading with an elbow into an error challenge. I think Morecambe fans are pretty unhappy about it, really, the decision to the red card, but it was given, and according to Derek Adams, it certainly changed the game. It remained goalless up until half-time, but in the second half, Accrington got their opener through Liam Coyle getting on the end of a low Mitch Clark cross to the opener. A pretty disastrous equaliser, to be honest. It was essentially a long punt upfield to Morecambe that bounced around, and Ryan Astley eventually put the ball into his own net, looping it over his own goalkeeper as well, but Accrington will get the lead back.
Going to let them down as well, so...
Yeah, low Ethel Hamilton's free kick restored Accrington's lead, and it would become 3-1 for Accrington Stanley after Jack Nolan broke forward after still in possession, setting up Tommy Lee, their makeshift striker, to give them the 3-1 victory. It's 3 wins in a row for Accrington, up to 9th, as I say, Gab. Accrington are one of those teams. I never consider them relegation battlers at League One level anymore. I think in the years they've really established themselves as a solid League One outfit. I mean, people can point to the size of the club, to the crowds they get, and maybe that is there. It's an example of how much they're overachieving. But I never look at them now as a team that's going to find themselves right down the bottom, struggling to survive. I always expect them to be around the middle of the pack. And when you spend a few years in the middle of a pack in a division, you start asking yourself, can we kick on? Is there a chance that we can go and do what we've seen in the last few years from maybe a Burton Albion or a Wycombe Wanderers, who have achieved above the odds and gone and played in the Championship for the first time ever? But I think I've talked with you about this on the EFL debate show sometimes. It feels like there's a bit of a cut-off point now, a bit of a gap forming between the top end of League One and the bottom end of League One. And it feels like for an Accrington, for instance, who do things so well under Andy Holt and John Coleman, as you say, it feels like for them, not only have they got to be perfect, but someone higher up has got to get things wrong.
Well,
the opportunity to come to get in there.
You have, if you put this Accrington Stanley side in the 15-16 League One season, I think they're probably up there. But Burton Albion were up there, Walsall were up there. It was a season where you had underdogs. Maybe even a couple of seasons after that when Shrewsbury were up there as well. I just feel like a lot of the big clubs in League One are kind of learning their lessons now. They're getting their act together. They're getting a structure in place. And that's kind of loses a little bit of the edge that the Accrington Stanleys could have in any theoretical sort of promotion playoff scramble race. So yeah, that's the concern for me. But having said that, I think the fact that we're even having this conversation is huge testament to Stanley. And they've not even got an out-and-out centre forward, have they? I mean,
No, they haven't at the minute. They haven't got Josh Woods available. Curle Adedoyan isn't available either.
Yeah. But
Matt Lowe's not been available. So Tommy Lee's leading the line, who of course is one that got from Bognor Regis Town. Just another brilliant example of a non-league recruit they picked up as well. And he's been leading the line recently for them.
Well, let's talk about that, Ed, because the false nine system, not the first thing you'd have associated with a John Coleman team, because normally the hallmark of his teams has been brilliant strikers, going back to your Billy Keys, Caden Jacksons, Colby Bishops, Leon Charles. I'm sure there's other examples, even Mullin going back a long way. But yeah, I think it's interesting that he's shown that flexibility to go with a false nine and adapt to what he's got available, and then have Tommy Lee with his pressing and his agility against the ball, and then bring that link-up play into the game. And that's where you have your Sean Wileys, your Sean McConvilles, your Coyles and your Hamiltons bringing on. And then James Keneally is pretty much the one that just sort of sits and anchors things. And it's working pretty well for Aki. So, I'm sure their fans are quite happy. I don't see them finishing in the top six just because of the nature of the competition, but they've achieved back-to-back top half finishes. So if they could finish in the top half again, or top 10, if they could crack the top 10 even, that would be just the most astonishing achievement.
It is, and there's nothing to be ashamed about that, certainly for Accrington. I mean, to be at the end up ninth now, that's sensational. It's an example of how far they're growing as a club, and they continue to grow. You see the developments they're doing to the Crown Ground.
I tell you what, Ed, just a quick aside, you've got to go to Coley's as well, because that bar looks absolutely swanky. Like you wouldn't have...
It does. I see a lot of pictures that Holt's putting out on it, certainly.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
It does look good. I really worry, though, that we're getting a closed circuit at the top of League One and the Championship, and I hate the idea that Accrington could never, ever get into the second tier. That does worry. It does worry me that you're looking at this where that top end and that bottom half are just separated.
Do you know what, Ed?
And you just get that same cycle of teams dropping between the Championship and League One every year. I hate the thought that could happen.
Yeah, I want Accrington Stanley to get into the Championship the same season that there's like a mad relegation from the Premier League. Wouldn't you absolutely love that? So it's like...
I remember you talking about Accrington v Everton last... Was it Accrington v Everton?
Or like where Manchester, after Manchester United lost 4-0 to Brentford or something, and I was thinking, imagine if they played Cambridge United. It's like, I love that thing that you get in some divisions where there's like a mad...
Well, it happened go back to 15-16, it happened with Burton. Villa went down bottom of the league.
Yeah.
And Newcastle went down as well. So the idea that Burton suddenly got up in the Championship were playing Villa and Newcastle in league games when before it was a major cup fixture.
Yeah.
It's that concerns to me, though, that Accrington, because of the way League One's going, we might not get to see these stories again.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want that. I love the competitiveness of League One, but I don't want us to have a top bracket and then the rest. I want this league to stay as competitive as it can.
Because that's where the magic is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you on that.
But Accrington, ninth at the moment, sensational. Going so well, and a great Lancashire derby win over Morecambe as well. They
seem to have a great record against Morecambe at home as well, don't they? I think they were unbeaten for about 10 years against them.
I think they do. They've done well, and Morecambe now slipped to the bottom of the table as well with Burton Albion's win as well. It's looking very dire.
Should we go on to the bottom four then, Ed? Because it's looking a little bit grim for Morecambe. Probably same you'd say for Forest Green. Your lot have shown some signs of resurgence. And then the question, I suppose, is over MK Dons, because they're not in a dogfight on paper. Instinctively, I think that they won't be in a dogfight because they'll pull away. But at the same time, you've kind of got to respect the position that they're in. And right now they are down there. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm fascinated by the teams in 18th to 20th, which are Oxford United, Wycombe Wanderers, and Milton Keynes Dons. Tried telling that to people 6 months ago.
Yeah.
That's the surprise with it, certainly. I see what you're saying with MK. I don't really understand what's going on there at the moment.
No, I find it very strange. Because I said they'd win the league with 100 points.
I said Stockport would come second, Gab. We make mistakes. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely. I think I suppose I sort of inherently trusted the recruitment process at MK Dons, so maybe a little bit blindly in hindsight, but hindsight's a wonderful thing and all that. But I think a lot of the signings they made were sort of the under 23s bracket, and maybe I think if you spoke to Liam Sweeting, he'd probably say that some of the signings, they would like to be judged over a longer period of time than perhaps the first couple of months, because a couple of them have come over from the League of Ireland, Dawson Devoy and Dara Burns. I'm not going to do. He hasn't been excellent yet. So a lot of work to do for MK Dons.
Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about a team, Gab, that's got above them after a 2-0 win yesterday. You were at Modern Road to see Cheltenham Town beat Shrewsbury Town by 2-0.
I was, yeah. I think the interesting thing for me is sort of working out whether it was more. I think if you ask me, was this result more to do with the progress Cheltenham showed under Wade Elliott, or more to do with the issues with Shrewsbury Town's performance, I'd probably lean more towards the latter camp, just because Shrewsbury didn't have a shot on target. They had 44 minutes after going 2 goals behind to get back into the game, and the lack of urgency really worried me. Now, whether it was fatigue, whether it was the lack of depth, Steve Cottrell made 3 substitutions. 2 of them were 87th minute onwards, and they were basically to get some minutes into the legs of Aidan O'Brien and Julian Da Costa. So effectively, he only made 1 substitution with the intention of changing the game. And with the greatest of respect to Raquel Pike, he's probably not someone that you'd go to really change a game in League One. Hopefully he proves me wrong on that, but that's the judgment I'd have at the moment. So yeah, I think Shrewsbury were missing a little bit of depth to really change the game in their favour. But yeah, I think Caleb Taylor was outstanding for Cheltenham as well. They look a little bit more patient in terms of the build-up play, a little bit more composed than last time I saw them. So some progress from them, but I think a lot of it had to do with the issues with Shrewsbury.
Yep, and a really important win to Cheltenham Town in their own survival hopes, certainly. We do need to get to League 2 because we've gone through League 1 quite a lot, so I'm going to run through the last 4 games. I apologise we can't go a bit more into detail on these 8 teams, but we will over the season, I'm sure. Port Vale 0, Sheffield Wednesday 1. Barry Bunnan had a Thor save from Jack Stevens. Ben Hennon had a header cleared off the line soon afterwards as well. Alice Harrison getting close to Port Vale with a flick on. The game ultimately decided, though, a fairly even game. Port Vale were pretty happy with the performance, but it got decided by an absolute cracker from range. Amazing goal, fantastic through him, and great scenes in that away, and certainly with the Wednesday faithful who always turn out in great numbers to their team as well. Another away win as well for Yorkshire side, Barnsley, who won 1-0 at Fleetwood Town. They won that very late on as well. Goal from Jack Aitchison, steering them across from James Norwood. I think Barnsley's Twitter thought it was Zayed Lakerch who actually got the cross, and I think Norwood tweeted saying, "Are you sure about that? Because I'm pretty sure I put the ball in for him instead." So they corrected that, and he had another win to Barnsley. They're going very strong at the top, as we mentioned already. 2-2 draw between Exeter City and Bristol Rovers as well. The opener from Bristol Rovers, John Marquis firing in at the back post. Exeter went back level through a penalty scored by Giovanni Brown. 2-1 to Exeter after a chaotic goal. There's been a few of those this weekend, actually. It was a ball over the top that bounced over James Belshaw, and Sam Nomby got in behind, basically just rolled it home into an empty net as well. But Bristol Rovers grabbed a pretty crucial point away from home, a team that they were heavily beaten up last season in League 2, by the way, as well, away at St James Park. 92nd minute equaliser through Ryan Loft. Gab, a statement after full time, a notable one for Exeter. Matt Taylor has been approached by Rotherham United and they've reluctantly agreed to let him go, and talks are ongoing. We will wait to see if any confirmation is to come about him moving on. Matt Taylor, the work he's done at Exeter certainly justifies, I think, the opportunity to move on to another job, albeit to a Rotherham side where I think even after the strong season they've had, their target is still survival in the Championship ultimately as well. I worry about Exeter if they lost him, certainly.
Yeah, I was talking to some Exeter City fans about this because my initial reaction, first of all, what a job, if it is the end, what a job Matt Taylor has done at Exeter City, and I think we've got to give credit to that, his development of young players. What an era for Exeter City, and they're on much better footing thanks to his work. So first of all, that's got to be mentioned. I think my first reaction in terms of what next for Exeter City was, I kind of thought they're going to go internal because you look at the way Exeter City are run, it feels like it's conducive to a promoting from within. They like to produce their own from their academy. That just felt intuitively like the sort of thing that they would look at, especially given that things have gone well with the current regime. They've just won promotion, they're flying high in League One. Would they really want to rock the boat? But the other perspective would be that if Wayne Carlisle goes with Matt Taylor, who are the options that they'd be looking at? I think there's Kevin Nicholson, who I think, with all respect to Kevin, I don't believe he necessarily pulled up trees at Torquay United. So I think the question would be for City, is there an internal hierarchy that's good enough to be that number one manager? So I think it's a trade-off. How much do you want to prioritise continuity and someone who knows the existing personnel and part of the fabric and ethos of the club, and how much do you want to prioritise getting the best possible person in? And it's a dilemma for Exeter.
I smell Paul Tisdale, the sequel. Probably not after the stock he's stolen, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, do you think Taylor would be good at Rotherham? Do you think it'd be the right fit?
I don't know. I think it's going to be a challenge for him. Maybe. I'm not sure. I think it's always difficult for Rotherham at Championship level because of the budgetary.
Well, their target's always survival, Gabby. Been after this, they've had a very strong start, certainly. But I always say, through all three sides that came at Wigan and Sunderland as well, your survival is your first target to start a season in a new Championship season. If you do anything more than that, it's an added bonus.
Yeah, for sure. That does make sense. It's going to be interesting though, because Matt Taylor's used to being managing a team that's challenging for the playoffs and promotion, and it's going to be a slightly different adjustment, I guess, to managing a team that's going to be in a slog for 50 points. So a bit of a different challenge. But listen, I rate Matt Taylor. He's a very good developer of young talent, and I think he's got a pragmatic side to him as well. So he's not wedded to any particular style. So I think that probably helps Rotherham as well.
I think, like any coach, he'd enjoy having Dan Barlaser and Chidozie Ogbene at his disposal, certainly. There's some great players to Rotherham, certainly. One final game in League One. Charlton Athletic 1, Oxford United 1. Marcus Brown with the opener for Oxford United. A class opener, actually, after a fierce strike. But Charlton will get an equaliser. Charlie Kirk Cross eventually finding Jaden Stockley for a close range header after some pinball in the Oxford box, which no doubt frustrated the Oxford defenders. They thought they got the job done, and Charlton ultimately ended up scoring for close range with Stockley as well. And it finishes level between those two. Charlton still without a win for a long period now, and a 1-1. They love 1-1s, Charlton. They keep getting far too many of them this season. It's keeping them away from those top spots, certainly. We'll run through the League One table with 11 games played for most of the sides. Plymouth Argyle lead the division, 25 points from 11 games. Ipswich Town in second, 24th from 11. Sheffield Wednesday up to third, they're on 23 from 11. Portsmouth, their unbeaten run over, 21 from 11. Barnsley and Bolton Wanderers complete the playoff places. They're on 20 points each. Peterborough and Derby County on 18 and 17 respectively. And then we fear there might be that bit of a gap between that top 8 and the ones above. Accrington currently in 9th. Down the bottom of the table, Morecambe after their defeat, down to bottom, 7 points from 11 games. Burton Albion after their crucial win over Forest Green Rovers, up above them now by the virtue of goal difference. They've also got 7 points as well. Forest Green Rovers a point above them and a place above them in 22nd. They're on 8. Bristol Rovers, even with that late draw, that late equaliser, still make up the bottom 4 with 9 points from 11 games. And then MK Dons 20th, Wickham 19th and Oxford 18th. I'm genuinely surprised by their placement there, but they've all now below Cheltenham after their 2-0 win over Shrewsbury Town as well. Let's drop down and take a look at the world's best 4th tier.
League 2.
League 2, Gab, I want to start with the Friday night fixture between Mansfield Town and Hartlepool United. It finished 2-2. Mansfield had a very comfortable start to this game, certainly, after some chances to Lakers Dakins. Some of them better taken than others, I have to say. There were some pretty bad misses and some decent efforts that were required by Ben Killip to save as well. But they got their opener through George Lapsley, getting on the end of a great Kellen Gordon cross, and the ball would fall to Riley Harbottle to grab a second as well. But then Hartlepool got back into it. And mainly because of their number 9, Josh Umera. He latched onto the end of a poor Harbottle back pass, rounded Christy Pym and scored from a really tight angle. And then I love his second goal, holding off his opponent with the ball over the top to find a space to sneak in an equaliser as well. We didn't get the chance to talk about Keith Curle coming into Hartlepool last week, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it. I think he's got a really tough task, to be honest, with what ultimately looks a pretty weak squad, really. I think a lot of the signings that Paul Hartley made before he was dismissed were kind of experimental ones, really. A lot brought into north of the border without that EFL proven experience, and replacing what was already some decent quality at Pools that moved on to other clubs. And so far, I don't think too many of those Hartlepool players have really lived up to the expectations you hoped they would. If there is one for me who has, it's definitely Josh Umera, who was picked up from non-league. They brought him into Wildston. I loved both of his goals on Friday, the finish on a tight angle, then holding off his opponent to eventually bag the equaliser as well. He's looking a complete striker at the moment, and I think he could be a really key pulse figure for Keith Curle as the season goes on ahead.
Yeah, I think, first of all, Josh Umerah, I think is going to be absolutely crucial to Paul's survival hopes, because he's been probably the best player this season in a really poor side. I think Keith Curle, he seems to have this trend of picking up jobs at the lower end of League Two and taking teams on reasonable progression, and by the end fans sort of get fed up of the football and want change. But I think that in terms of the job that he did at Carlisle United, taking over a fallen team that had just been relegated from League One, and then I think kept them up that season. Then they went on a couple of cup runs the year after. Then they got into the playoffs the following season, thanks to their good form in the first half of that year. And then things kind of went a little bit stale, arguably, after that. And then, not a million miles off at Northampton, although he did, the difference being he did take them up in his first full season. But I think the League One season was quite hard to watch for a lot of cobblers. And ultimately, Curle sort of went in around January, February that season. So I think, can he get results for taking over a team that's struggled, that's towards the bottom of League Two? I think the answer is yes. I think sometimes fans can get a little bit frustrated after a certain amount of time with the style of football, but I think he can certainly serve a purpose as a manager, and he could be what Hartlepool need right now.
It's been decent for his first two games, a couple of draws, a 0-0 with Gillingham, this 2-2 comeback draw with Mansfield here. They are off bottom now, still in the bottom two for now, but they're in the mix certainly with the teams down there. And the challenge, I think, for him is getting the most out of these players that I think have been pretty underwhelming so far. He's got to get performances out of Regan Tamilty, for instance, at right back, especially whilst Jamie Sterry is not fully fit. He's got to get performances out of Ewan Murray in the back line, out of Alex Lacey in the back line as well.
You said Ewan Murray.
Come on. Forget that loan with an option to buy. That is disgraceful. He's got to get performances out of the players in the back line. You look at Brodie Patterson and at left wing back, or Jake Hasty out wide. It's not working for any of them yet, and I think he needs to if he's going to get Hartlepool out of trouble. I agree with the importance of Josh Umerah, certainly. He's got it tough, certainly, because I think Hartlepool's is one of the weakest squads around. But it's been a decent start. They're still winless, Hartlepool. They do need that first victory, and they have come close on a couple of occasions, but been denied by some late goals that have stopped them there. Though that's a good draw with Mansfield. And Mansfield, it's the kind of result that they might look back on and say, that's cost us promotion at the end of the season if they don't get it. It's frustrating to be in that comfortable position and to throw it away like that. Not a good night to Clough side on Friday night at Field Mill, but they have to take the points on this occasion. Down to London. AFC Wimbledon 2, Colchester United 1. Colchester United got the lead through Kwesi Appiah header, but AFC Wimbledon were turned around to pick up on a win that they've been waiting a long time for. Josh Davison latching onto a loose ball to grab the equaliser. He would convert a penalty that Ayuba Sal won after a foul by Osama Ashley and would ultimately give Wimbledon the victory. This was Colchester United's first game with their new head coach, Gab. Matt Bloomfield is in at Colchester United. This is the external appointment they've gone for. Mr. Wycombe Wanderers is at Colchester. Now, I learnt during the week about a rivalry between Colchester United and Wycombe Wanderers that I didn't actually realise was there.
Goes back to the non-league days.
Yeah, it stems back to non-league, to the 1980s. I suppose you could call it a competitive rivalry, a bit like the one that's there between Crystal Palace and Brighton Hove Albion, where it's not so much about location, but there's been fiercely competitive games between them, and they've had a big impact in going up the leagues over the time. So that's formed there, and it's maybe one for a bit of the older generation, certainly from Wycombe perspective, compared to perhaps the younger generation from Wycombe. But Wycombe fans certainly have their opinion about their man going to Colchester United to become the head coach. Colchester United, we knew they were going to go external. We got excited about the thought of going external. They've gone with a rookie, and I think this is a pretty tough first gig for a rookie to have, certainly. He's got some good players, I think, at his disposal, and he needs to make good use of them, because it's a difficult situation for a rookie to be thrown into right now with Colchester United.
Yes, although you'd also say that there's potentially a decent core of players at Colchester as well, with the right guidance. So Matty Longstaff, they've got on loan from Newcastle. I think he's a fantastic player. Noah Chilvers as well. I mean, that's two attack-minded midfielders that are more than capable of delivering. Freddie Sears is an experienced forward. He'll get you a few goals. Luke Chambers is someone who's got championship experience. Junior Chimede is a very highly rated young right back. And they've got, I'm sure, a few academy graduates coming through. So do I see this Colchester team as a bunch of no-hopers? Probably not, although some of their fans might have disagreed with me at times. But no, I think that it's a tough gig for him. But yeah, hopefully he can get some results.
I understand the concern of Colchester fans, because I think naturally in this situation you just want someone a bit more proven. Now the truth is we don't know what Bloomfield could be an absolutely sensational appointment here, and he could lead them on to very good things. But I think very understandably there's also that bit of concern from Colchester that they're not taking an experienced figure into a difficult situation right now.
I also think that there's possibly a danger that managers who have been in League Two and bought the T-shirt, as it were, are kind of looking at Colchester and thinking, is this really the place that I want? Do I see a vision at this football club? Do I see a sustainable plan that can get us on the rise? And possibly a lot of those people are looking at it and saying no. So I think there's one thing that you can say, can level at Robbie Cowling and say, are you looking at experienced managers, or are you appealing to managers that have done it before at this level as well?
Well, apparently there were over 100 applicants to this role. Now, we don't know who they were. They might have all been of the calibre of Matt Bloomfield, relatively inexperienced in management. Yeah. But I think that's another reason for the concerns, is that there's so many applicants apparently. And they've gone with a guy who, I think looks like the kind of person who should have a good career management. How do you say from his time as a player, but they've gone with him
because it could be.
Well, that is a good question.
Yeah, so you don't know what the nature of those applicants are. I think I'd probably be a little bit careful about that. Listen, I think the good thing so if I compare it to, for example, Jake Buxton, who was playing for Burton Albion, and then the next season he was managing them. A little bit different with Matt Bloomfield because he's had some time. I think he's had some injuries, and then he spent a bit of time on the coaching staff and worked with Gareth Ainsworth on that level. So I think it's very different, sort of from going straight from playing thrown into management. Having said that, I think he'll probably want an experienced assistant alongside him, and hopefully the sporting director Colchester have got can do some good work. Jury's still out on him, still early days with him. So we'll see. But I think he could do with an experienced assistant. But I think it's a little bit different from going straight in from playing.
I definitely agree it's different to Buxton. Definitely. That was a bit... I mean, Buxton did have a little bit of prior coaching experience with the youth teams at Burton while still being a player, but he was really flung into it.
I think you want a period where you just focus on coaching.
I think you do, certainly. And I think I wish Bloomfield the best. I hope he could do well for them, certainly. And I completely agree with you. He's got some good players there. I hope he can make good use of them, because if he does, he'll get Colchester out of trouble pretty well. But there's a bit of uncertainty around Bloomfield and Colchester at the moment, which is understandable, and we wish him the best. But a defeat in his opening game yesterday down in London. Elsewhere in London, Leyton Orient played at home to Newport County, Gab, and Leyton Orient's phenomenal unbeaten start to the season is over. Newport County beat them by 2-1. There were some chances to Aaron Wildig and Charlie Kelman both before the opening goal came. It was from Will Evans, who headed the ball in from a corner to get Newport the lead. And they made it 2-0. Lawrence Vigouroux was very hesitant in possession, gave away a penalty. Omar Bogle stepped up and converted that as well. Leyton Orient would pull one back with a Tom James through kick that rebounded into the path of Aaron Drinan. But Newport County got the win. Typical that after last week giving so much praise to Lawrence Vigouroux and calling him one of the best goalkeepers at the level, he goes and puts in a performance like that where he makes a mistake, he gives away a penalty, and I mentioned how good his penalty record is, and he doesn't save this one. But Newport, really important win for them, I think. I think Roby's really been feeling the pressure at the minute. They've been experimenting with a few different formations. He's not had Thierry Neves available until yesterday, so he went with Will Evans to partner Omar Bogle up top as well.
So a really important win for James Roby's Newport County. Yes, so I think that was a massive, massive win for the Exiles, because when you look at Leyton Orient and what they've done so far this season, their start to the season has been pretty much unprecedented. I think there had been a few people who had maybe questioned James Roby's position because of the results, and possibly lacking a bit of a soft underbelly. I think they'd had at times, but certainly not something that could be levelled at them yesterday, because you're going to have a very hard underbelly, I guess, to win at Leyton Orient. But I think bringing in Lindley made a difference, the lad on loan from Aston Villa, and Aaron Wildig's back fit now. You've got his experience in midfield.
His fitness has always been quite touch and go, Wildig's, which is a shame because I always thought he could have a really big influence on this team when he's available.
Yeah, for sure. And also Omar Bogle, delighted to see him off the mark from the penalty spot, because I think in the right system, if you create chances for him, he will score goals at this level. So massive win for Newport, and hopefully for them, that's the start of a run, because if they can win on Tuesday and then beat Rochdale on Saturday, I think they give themselves a great opportunity to get some momentum.
They do, and it needed to help pull some of the pressure off Robury, certainly, as well. They've been finding it tough, the run of Thorn, particularly at Rodney Parade as well, but a successful 3-5-2 formation yesterday. The Lewises both playing at wing-back. You got Adam down one side, Aaron down the other as well. Mickey Dimitriou, Gab, I think is one of the most underrated players at League 2 level. I love this guy playing on the left side of the back three. He's someone who can really bomb on as well. Pleased to see Wilder back in the team as well, because as I said, his fitness is inconsistent, and Lindley's made a bit of an impact with Mariah Welsh as well. Very good win.
And Thierry Nevers as well.
Absent yesterday.
Yeah, so
absent yesterday through injury, so a chance. So Will Evans, who I think had also been kind of utilised as a sort of auxiliary wing back as well, but I think naturally as a forward. So good for him yesterday to get the opening goal, certainly. And Omar Beckel, his strike partner, Omar Bogle to get the second goal as well. I'm doing great with names today, aren't I? I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah.
Really,
yeah,
really
very good stuff, Ted.
But, yeah, Leyton Orient still top of the table, though they had a lead at the start. But the team right on the table now, Gab, are Northampton Town, who beat Swindon Town yesterday. They came to behind to beat Swindon Town at the county ground. Johnny Williams got the opener for Swindon Town on his return from Wales duties. He really is such a big influence on the Swindon Town team, and I think they're going to feel it when he goes away to the World Cup as well. I fear a bit for them there. But Northampton got back level, and Mitch Pinnock free kick flicked in by Ben Fox for his first Northampton goal, and that pair combined again, but the opposite way round to grab a late winner. Ben Fox crossing to the back post, and Mitch Pinnock to grab a winner. A late chance to Swindon, but not scored. Gab, am I allowed in the Mark Leonard fan club yet? Because I think I have asked you about this before. I've already signed up for the Owen Moxon one and the Will Randall one.
Okay.
I would like to join the Mark Leonard.
I'll let you join the Mark Leonard fan club.
Thank you. I really appreciate.
We've got a nice pool here. Little table tennis, table. Like a bit billiards room. It's pretty fun in the Mark Leonard fan club.
It's a great club to be in as well, because he's one hell of a player, and that's a great win for Northampton as well. They beat a Swindon side that won 3 on the bounce, and did it without Sam Hoskins, who wasn't in the matchday squad as well.
Which kind of I'm can't even find the word that I'm looking for. It gets rid of the assumption that Northampton are just a one-man team and it's all about Sam Hoskins, because which I don't think ever held much water, because they've always had a lot of depth to them and squad wise, but to come from behind, going behind in the second half and then pull it back and win it through Mitch Pinnock's late goal, I think that was a big moment for Northampton, and I think it shows the strength and depth that they've got. Ben Fox was one who came off the bench, Danny Hilton, when you can bring Danny Hilton off the bench as well, when Ali Koiki was forced off at the end of the first half. I think that shows what they've got in reserve.
Well, I think they're one of the strongest squads in the league, certainly. And it is so much more than Hoskins, and this is a great example of it. As I say, Mitch Pinnock, I've liked Kieran Bowie as well as on loan from Thorn. Yeah. He's been good influence to them as well. We've talked about Leonard till the cows come home as well. Louis Perry leading the line instead of Hilton. I'm a bit curious what you think about a Perry and Hilton, who you would consider to be the stronger. Because I quite liked a Perry at the back end of last season. I was enjoying his all-round game, and I understand him leading the line at the moment, because the Hilton, there was a lot of expectation maybe upon him because of what he did last time at League 2 level with Luton Town. Ultimately, he's a lot older now as well, but I like a Perry leading the line for I think he's a good forward.
I'm not sure. I think it depends what we're sort of holding. I think he puts a shift in for Louis Perry. Certainly, he's well built as well. I don't see him as one of the top strikers in the division.
No, I think that's there.
Yeah.
But I think for Northampton, he brings what they need. There can be a direct side. They have a great set piece threat. We know with Guthrie and the delivery that you get from Hoskins and Pinnock as well. I think a Perry fits quite well into this Cobbler system. Yeah, possibly. I think with Danny Hilton, he's one you've got to give the ball to his chest or to his feet. I don't think he's an aerial target man. But I think, he's not started the season as he might have hoped. But at the same time, this is someone who was playing in a championship playoff semi-final a few months ago.
You don't do that if you're not a good player. So, I can see Danny Hilton coming good.
Yeah, absolutely. Leyton Orient are first, Northampton Town are second, third Gab still are Stevenage, who went away to Crawley Town yesterday and won by 2-1. The opener to Stevenage from Jamie Roberts. I love this volley so much. He just puts his foot through and it smashes in off the bar. It's a really, really, really fun goal if you haven't seen it yet. James Tilley claimed a handball from a blocked shot, but nothing was given to Crawley Town. Jamie Reid would later at the post to Stevenage as well, but Crawley would get back level after half time through Ashley Nadazan. Stevenage got another late winner though, as they always seem to do in every single game at the moment. They got a penalty after a Nick Cerula handball. Luke Norris steps up converted. It's another Stevenage win. It's another Crawley defeat, and it's another late winner for Stevenage. As I say, they can do no wrong right now under Stevenage.
Well, just as a quick point on Stevenage, I think it's their strength in depth. We talked about that with Northampton, but I think Stevenage have got it because whether it's fitness as well, but so I'm going to look at the substitutions that they made. So 65 minutes in, they brought on Luke Norris, Jake Taylor and Jake Reeves. They made a massive difference to the game. And then about 11 minutes after that, they also brought on the wing-backs or full-backs, Luther Wildin and Max Clark. And those 5 players just transformed the game and ultimately culminated in the penalty that Luke Norris put away. So I think that just shows, firstly, that Stevenage are a very fit side, but also that they've got the options to change games, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, I've said it before during the season. Stevenage have got a relatively small squad, but there's lots of competition in key areas. You've got 2 quality wing-back options on either side. Midfield depth as well. Tons of forwards that can be brought on. So if they need to go all-out attack at the end, they can do that. And Stevenage is making great use of the 5 subs for all across the season so far. Gab, Crawley, I'd like your opinion, please, on Kevin Betsy. Came in during the summer, really well thought of coach, new to management. There's a lot of uncertainty now around his job. There's a lot of pressure from fans, I think, who feel that he's not the right man to get Crawley out of the situation they find themselves in. I wonder where you stand on Betsy at the moment.
Where do I stand on Kevin Betsy? I think, first of all, it's no secret that the results that they've delivered have been disappointing compared with what was expected, because when Wagner United came in, they basically said that we've got a 50-50 chance of getting promoted within 2 years. And as soon as you do that, you set yourselves a certain level of expectation. I think in one sense, Crawley have been recruiting to try and challenge for promotion this season in their eyes, because they signed Dom Telford, of course, who was the top goal scorer in this division last season. And whenever you do that, it's obviously a statement. But at the same time, I think it's ironic that Dom Telford only got 4 minutes off the bench this afternoon.
I was going to mention this, yeah.
Whether it was partly a fitness thing, but slightly interesting that. But I think also they're probably trying to evolve the squad and give it a younger, fresher look after they had a more experienced squad last season. So with that in mind, I'm always reluctant to judge managers too harshly after 11 games. And I think Kevin Betsy would argue that he's not maybe had the time that he wanted. Having said that, Preston Johnson has flown in from the US on Friday. He hinted that a change of personnel could be part of the review of Crawley Town's poor start. So
I think he said it was a change of formation, is what he referred to.
Did he say it's formation?
I think it was that he's talking about. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, I think all those things kind of point to a little bit of heat on Kevin Betsy. I still think 11 games is too early to judge a coach in terms of what they're capable of, given what Kevin Betsy, his reputation in coaching and youth circles. So, I'd like to see him be given more time, but at the same time, there is a certain pressure that comes with working for Crawley under the current ownership regime.
You mentioned Dom Telford on the bench again yesterday, and as you said, played about 5 minutes. Now, like you say, if there is a fitness problem with him, fair enough. But if not, this is your marquee signing. This is the signing that was the big one that got loads of people's attention during the summer. You're talking about the Golden Boot winner last season, who got 25 goals in 37 games for Newport County. He's got 1 in 9 appearances at Crawley Town this term. Now, you have got a starting front line that Crawley went with yesterday of Ashley Nadazan, Tom Nichols and James Tilley. I think that should definitely be a decent one at League 2 level for me. But I'd love to know why Telford doesn't get into that, or at the very least doesn't feature from more often from the bench as part as changes. It's not going great for him or the team at the moment. If there was a performer at Crawley that I'd single out, it's probably Tom Fellows, their right wing back, who's on loan from West Bromwich Albion. And that's about it, to be honest, to Crawley at the moment. It's really poor. I know that Preston Johnson put out a video during the week where he acknowledged the issues that are currently in place at Crawley Town, which is good to know that he's acknowledging it. But there is a difference between talking the talk and walking the walk. They're different things. And until an upturn in league fortune appears, things have to remain very concerning at Crawley Town, and you have to remain, Gab, concerned about the way Crawley are going, really.
Yeah, I've got some concerns over the ownership structure at Crawley and whether they're taking themselves seriously, the whole Sidemen thing. There's part of me that kind of rubs me up the wrong way a little bit. So yeah, I've got some concerns over that.
Yeah, definitely. Crawley, the complete opposite, quite frankly, what I hoped they'd be this season. They continue to be very disappointing, and you know, we always have it, Gab, with the bottom of League 2, because there's only 2 relegation spots and poor teams get away with it, and Crawley might hope they can be one of those at the moment, because they are really disappointing in all aspects at the moment. One team down the bottom that will probably be down there with them quite soon, actually, is Harrogate Town, who had an early kick-off yesterday against Bradford City, the local affair, the All Yorkshire affair. They've got a good history, Harrogate have, with this. They've won all 4 previous meetings prior to this, but they didn't win this one. Bradford City won this by 2-1. They got the opener from Andy Cook, another goal for him, scoring from the penalty spot. Jaheim Headley got the equaliser for Harrogate Town, playing off the left-hand side. Richie Smallwood had a free kick that was stopped by Pete Jameson, but Bradford would grab a winner as a through ball found Tyreek Wright, who's come back from international duty with Ireland under 21 to come back into the team. Got a brilliant finish to give Bradford a crucial win over a side that's been a bogey team up to now. I felt coming into this one, Gab, that for Bradford, if this was one of the hurdles they could get over, the belief around the club would really shoot up, because they've been such a bogey team for Bradford City ever since they come into the Football League. Bradford are 7 unbeaten now in League 2. They've got 5 wins in that time. They're up to 4th. Brad Halliday and Ramoni Critchlow back in defence after suspension and injury respectively. It's just Liam Rydell to return, and they're back to full strength in defence. And I'm doing Matty Thorns a bit of an injustice saying that, to be honest, because I think he's been quite good at left back as well. The wide options at Mark Hughes' disposal really are remarkable at the moment. They are looking a very, very good team right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think Tyreek Wright has made a huge difference to them. I think I saw his goal in one of the home games a couple of weeks ago, where he just cut inside from the left, and then it was like arrowed into the far corner. And then you've got Dion Pereira as well. I think that's very exciting. And you look at somebody like Levi Sutton, who really impressed me last season. I thought he was one of their best players. He's not really been getting into the team this year. So I think that speaks to, and I'm going to come back to it, the depth that Mark Hughes is working with. And obviously when you've got a striker like Andy Cook, who's on song, you've always got a chance.
You have. That's a really big win. I'm really pleased. And like I say, it kind of feels like the belief around the club will have gone up now, because Harrogate before was a game that stopped them in their tracks, that stopped this kind of run, but not this time. And part of that, I think, is because Harrogate right now, I think, are heading in completely the wrong direction. Their downturn in form has really gone badly. I remember you had Simon Weaver on at the start of the season, didn't you, with the Adeboye-Show, Gab?
Yeah.
I'm curious what he said and whether you think he's followed what he said was going to come from Harrogate this season.
Well, I think that the big thing for Harrogate is that when they first came into the EFL, they were this high pressing team that sort of blew teams out of the water with that. I think what we've seen last season was there's been a slight drop off in terms of the intensity. Obviously they had their defensive issues last season. And I think this season was about getting a little bit closer to what we associate with Harrogate Town. They've not quite been able to do that. Defensively, they've been a little bit better, but they've still had their issues going forward. Just 7 goals scored all season now. And I think that's a concern for Simon Weaver, because you look at somebody like Luke Armstrong, who started last season in sumptuous form. For the last 12 months, he's not really been at it now. He's still very much one of the first names on the team sheet, and I think that's possibly partly because Simon Weaver feels that there's not been enough creativity for him, which I suppose is quite damning of the likes of Daly and Patterson and Muldoon and Osterfield and Follerin, all of which you'd probably hoped for something in that sense. So a lot of work to do for Harrogate, and I think creating chances for Luke Armstrong whilst getting back to that energetic, high-pressing style we associated with them previously. I think that's got to be the priority for them this season.
In big need of a win right now, certainly, and a defeat in their local fixture yesterday against Bradford City at Wetherby Road. A big win for Gillingham, Gab. Gillingham 1, Sutton United 0. It was left late, a stoppage time winner from Alex McDonald getting on the rebound. I think Gills were actually good value for the huge 3 points to them. Actually, there was maybe not too much in terms of the game. Sutton quite below their standards. Gillingham got some chances through people like Scott Cash, get Haki Delican as well, but that's a great win for them. There was a bit of a new look team yesterday, some changes in there. Rob McKenzie brought into midfield with Stuart O'Keefe out. They had Shea Alexander brought in a right wing back, Mikael Mandron and Scott Cash up top together, Jordan Green and Hakiba Delican out wide in a thought or two. The same formation as Sutton United normally do themselves were without the suspended Donovan Wilson, so it was killing Kouassi partnering Omar Bagil up top. Gone a bit flat for Sutton recently. 3 defeats in the last 4, all of them late defeats though, so undoubtedly difficult to take. But Gills, it's just nice to see them get a win. It's only their 3rd league goal this season, by the way, but huge 3 points to them at Priestfield yesterday.
Yeah, I think they've before today they'd only had 2 good performances all season. One of them was against Rochdale, who obviously really struggled in the early part of the season. Another one was at Grimsby, where they drew. But yeah, I think with this game against Sutton United, I think I'm conscious of putting too much weight on it in terms of this is the start of the Gills revival, because a lot of Sutton United fans were talking about how poor they were, and obviously that dictates a little bit of how much Gillingham have to do. So I think the opposition is relevant and what they produce, but at the same time, I think if you're in Gillingham's situation, it is a little bit more, you just need that result. It takes them 4 points above the drop zone, which I think is a really significant thing for the Gills. And it gives them a little bit of breathing space and an opportunity to sort of get their season moving. Defensively, a lot of encouragement to take, especially from McKenzie in midfield. That energy that he's brought in the absence of the lad they got from Brentford, who's been injured, I think. Max Amar and Will Wright, hopefully they can start to form a partnership. I think bigger challenges to come in terms of whether this is the start of the Gills revival.
Elkan Baggott back in the squad, away on international duty with Indonesia. Probably deemed maybe not fit enough after the travel to play in this game. But yeah, Amer and Wright forming a partnership, you hope, and Baggott can have an impact on that as well, with Ryan Law in a wing-back role, or maybe Che Alexander in a wing-back role as well. Really important win for Gillingham yesterday, certainly. Another team involved down the bottom, Rochdale. They lost 2-1 to Doncaster Rovers. Doncaster very nearly grabbed an opener after a howler from Richard O'Donnell, really outside the box, but the chance could be taken. They would get the opener though through Kieran Agard. Scott Quigley would grab an equaliser to Rochdale from a header, but they were thrown behind again to George Miller after a nice through ball from Carl Noyle, who've got assists to both goals, by the way, yesterday. I'd like your thoughts on Doncaster Rovers, please, Gab. They went 4-4-2 again yesterday. Kieran Agard partnering George Miller up top. Agard's been the backup man for a while under Gary McSheffrey. And McSheffrey, I feel like he's been feeling the pressure a bit from Doncaster Rovers stands recently after some poor performances after a strong start of the season. He'll be aided by the last couple of results, albeit their wins against lowly ranked sides at the moment in Rochdale and Crawley. Yeah,
for sure. I think having Ben Close back in midfield is quite a big plus for Doncaster. I think he's a good midfielder at this level. Carl Hurst seems to have made an impact. Maxwell was someone who, the left back, James Maxwell, was someone a lot of Doncaster fans wanted to see more of. And since he's come back into the 11, I think it's back-to-back wins for Doncaster, if I'm not mistaken. Molyneux's back as well. So things starting to look a little bit brighter as well. I'm excited about Carl Hurst and the impact that he's had. Scored a really good goal, I think it was, against Crawley last week. So, and George Miller as well is full of running. So some positives from Doncaster from the last couple of games, but at the same time, I think it's still, it has been against weaker opposition. So, I think there are going to be some bigger tests to come. They've obviously got, Hartlepool on Tuesday, but after that, it's Leyton Orient, Carlisle, Crewe, Stevenage. So that's going to be a tough run of fixtures. So, but if they can beat Hartlepool.
We're doing so well today.
I know, yeah. They can beat Hartlepool on Tuesday. and get into the top 7, then that puts them in a good position going into tough run fixtures.
They can, and they're without Tommy Rowe at the moment as well, who I think is such a big influence on them because of his versatility, so important to them. But they're doing well in his absence, this thought or two. It's working at the moment with Carl Hurst-Molyneux out wide, certainly, and please say God gets him starts as well, because he's been a backup there for so long, and I always think he's a good impact man, but you just look at him thinking, can you get some opportunities to play up top, and he's getting them at the moment with George Miller, and it's rewarded them with back-to-back wins, and he was one of the goal scorers yesterday. Tranmere Rovers beat Barrow by a goal to nil, second consecutive defeat to Barrow after the defeat to Leyton Orient last week as well. The goal to Tranmere was a low finish from Josh Hawkes off the left-hand side, really nice goal. Elliot Nevitt would hit the post with an effort to Tranmere as well. They had some good opportunities. Dinel Samiu on loan from Southampton, denied by Paul Tharman from a header, had to pull out a great key clearance to stop a Barrow cross as well to preserve the clean sheet. Good old Tranmere are back, Gab. 1-0 win over Salford City, 1-0 win over Walsall, and a 1-0 win over Barrow. Jordan Turnbull and Dinel Samiu forming a really solid partnership in the centre of defence. No coincidence to me as well that this run comes in line with Kieran Morris coming back into matchday squads and starting 11s.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Morris coming back is a huge boost for Tranmere Rovers. And actually, I don't know what you think about this, Ed. I could see them going on a run now. They've already got 3 straight wins. They've already got a good defensive record. If you add Morris's creativity to the mix, and you've got Elliot Nevitt with his sort of relentless running, I could see them really making their way into those playoff promotion spots. I still think Autos is on for Tranmere.
I would hope so. It's a nice first 11 to look at there. I mean, I'm a big fan of Josh Dacus-Cogley and Ethan Bristol, a great pair of flying fullbacks. Been deployed at wing back sometimes as well. I think Morris and Hawkes are some great wide wingers. Got Leo Connor back as well. He was away on international duty with Ireland at the 21s. He's a really big part of that midfield base alongside Chris Murray. And then a pair, I think, of really good finishers in Kane Hemmings and Elliot Nevitt up top, certainly. So with that link provided now from midfield to the front line with Kieran Morris, potential for it, certainly. And 1-0s could become common with Tranmere because they have been already. Certainly, it feels like we're seeing good old Tranmere back. Certainly, 3 1-0s in a row for them. Going good. Might be worth keeping an eye on. Certainly, 2 more games I'm going to run through. 3 more games, sorry, I'm going to run through actually. 3 draws. Stockport County 1, Walsall 1. The opener from Paddy Madden to Stockport County getting the end of a great cross from Oliver Crankshaw. Madden would come close to a second with an acrobatic second half effort. Stockport County generated a lot of chances, but Walsall found a late equaliser through Andy Williams, grabbing a goal from a corner. Stockport, still so disappointing, really. They're getting hit by late goals. They've still got more red cards, Gab, than they have wins in all competitions this season. It's a miserable stat to have, really. They're a long way off the team I thought they were going to be this season.
Yeah, it's been a disappointing start for Stockport. They've been held back a little bit by individual errors, lack of discipline as well. Not quite the start that Dave Challoner would have wanted, especially considering that people were hoping that they would be sort of among there again. But
guilty.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I had them up there as well.
It is. They're a disappointment this season, certainly. And I think Walsall have dropped off a bit as well.
I know, yeah.
As well, actually.
Well, there was a lot of excitement about the Saddlers, wasn't there, sort of after the first couple of games. And then since then, it's been pretty much downhill from there. So a lot of work to do for Michael Flynn. Disappointing form.
Yeah, probably a better result to Walsall, we'd say, grabbing that league equaliser, but not really ideal for either. They need to get some wins into their system, certainly, to get going.
Yeah.
1-1 between Salford City and Grimsby Town. The opener 2 minutes in from Theo Vassell, scoring from a corner. An equaliser in the first half from Lewis Richardson with a scramble in the box. Grimsby went to a back 3 yesterday, Gab, a change from their back 4. Harry Clifton and Anthony Driscoll-Glenn as wing-backs. Mishi Athete and Ryan Taylor forced absentees from the matchday squad. You were in midweek at Blundell Park, weren't you, to see them play Carlisle United, where Carlisle obviously got a 2-1 win. What do you think of Grimsby so far? Because we've had some quite high hopes about them on their run of form that they could potentially pursue the top parts playoffs. It's dropped off a little bit in the last 2 games.
Yeah, they have. I think, first of all, Harry Clifton as a wing-back seems to make sense to me because I think that probably works for him a little bit more than maybe as a midfielder, because if you're playing in central midfield, there's going to be spells where you need to be able to dictate the play and get on the ball and make things happen. And I'm not quite sure he's that type of player. I think he's a little bit limited on the ball, but I think as a wing-back with his energy, I think you can get a lot out of him. I think once John McAtee returns, I think that's going to be a big plus for Grimsby. We saw what a difference that made when he returned in their National League season, and I think that's going to be absolutely crucial for them. But Lewis Richardson, I think they've got a forward who can create something out of nothing. I think he's a really exciting forward. He changed the game coming off the bench in midweek. And Andy Smith on loan from Hull is another one that I like. So a couple of really good loanees in there. But I had Grimsby 7th before the season. Now I'm starting to think it might be more of a mid-table campaign for them.
Yeah, you mentioned return to fitness. They've got Otis Khan and Niall Mayer back fit and part of their team as well. I think Khan's going to have a good impact in midfield.
I see a lot of people like to...
And Mayer came back into... Part of the reason they went to a back three was because Mayer was back available, so it was him, Waterthall and Smith on our back line yesterday.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think Andy Smith, it's difficult to leave him out as well, isn't it? A lot of people seem to like Otis Khan. I thought he was probably their brightest spark, Grimsby, in the first half. Or in midweek this is, but at the same time I feel like he's quite one-footed. He relies on his right foot, and sometimes you want a little bit more in terms of being able to go onto his left foot, and so I feel like opponents that are able to cotton onto that and sort of show him onto his weaker foot might be able to stop him a bit more. So if he could work on his weaker foot, then maybe I'll be sold on Otis Khan.
Maybe. One final game to mention: Carlisle United 0, Curle Alexandra 0. I've got nothing written down here. I think that sums up the game, to be truthful with you. Only 0-0 yesterday. Carlisle.
I think we've got to give some credit to Crewe Alexandra for their solidity, because that's not what we were talking about Crewe Alexandra last season. There was a lot of chaos there, and I think the one thing that Alex Morris has done is he's instilled some organisation into this team. So I think that, Rob McDonald has done a lot better as a signing than I'd maybe expected, and it's been a solid start for Crewe. They've not playing anyone away. They've not been outstanding, but they've been solid. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that you could ask for after last season.
Yeah, Rod McDonald and Calvin Mellor returning to Brunton Park not long after leaving and coming back with a point after a goalless draw. League 2 table to finish. Leyton Orient, even after their defeat, their unbeaten run is over. They still lead the way, 28 points from 11 games. It's a fantastic return. But there's some good competition just behind them now. Northampton Town in second, 26 points from 11 games. Stevenage in third, 25 points from 11. Then a little bit of a gap into the playoff places. Bradford City in fourth, they're on 21 from 11. Salford are also on 21, they're in fifth place. Barrow, 21 points from 11 in sixth. Mansfield Town wrap up the playoffs in 20 points from their 11 games. Doncaster just outside by goal difference. Carlisle in 9th on 18. Swindon in 10th on 17. Tranmere and Crewe wrap up the bottom half. Bottom of the table, Rochdale after their defeat, 5 points from 11 games. Hartlepool after their draw, up to 6 points from 11 games, still inside the bottom two for now. Crawley just outside by goal difference, they're on 6 points. Colchester also on 6 points. Harrogate Town on 8 points. Stockport County on 9 points. Gillingham after that win have gone to 18th. That's the bottom of the table to you at the minute. It's how crucial those 3 points were to them. They're on 10 points in their 11 games and have scored 3 goals, and I cannot get over that. How they could be on 10 points but have scored 3 goals.
Mental.
Mighty impressive.
In a way.
We're gonna wrap up that episode there. Gab, thank you very much for your input today. Thank you very much. You are a lifesaver. I cannot stress that enough.
I'm not going to argue with you, Ed.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you soon for more from the world's best third and fourth tiers. We'll see you then. Goodbye.